You know what day it is. It's 10 Toes Tuesday. And today we're going over a controversial, well, it's not controversial. Today we're going over my dad again and heating and AC and how that shaped me for what I'm currently going through. So sometimes without having to go through some hardships early on, and this is why I embrace these challenges that life gives you, and I'm glad that I go through some of these hard things, is it molds you to be what you need to be, and when the hard times come, it seems easy to you. As you know, I'm from Huntsville, Alabama. We're not gonna do an introduction or anything like that. I'm from Huntsville, Alabama. Moved to Columbus, Ohio, and I now reside in Ohio. If you can for me, hit that like button, share or subscribe, either one. If not, that's okay. Click off, keep it moving. But when I was growing up, as I told you, my great-grandfather, they called him Mr. Moore, and that was unheard of at that time. Mr. Moore had 500 acres of land. At least that's the way the story goes. He had a lot of land. He sold off most of it before he died, and he gave some to my grandfather. Now, my grandfather gave that to my mother and my father as their inheritance before he died. So they decided to buy a house. In order to buy this house, they had to make some decisions. If you've ever bought a house or built a house, you have to decide what kind of stove, how big of a layout you want, if it should be on a slab, 1 floor, 2 floors, you get the idea. They built this L-shaped ranch. And when they were constructing everything, they decided to go without heating and cooling. So it had no central air, no central heat. Alabama gets hot. It gets really hot. In the summer, it can get, in the shade up to 100, 110 degrees. It's hot. In the winter, even though we have milder winters in Alabama, the temperatures, sometimes we get ice storms, so the temperatures can get down into the mid to low 30s, which is cold for Alabama. Usually not freezing, but we did have a few ice storms. They decided to build this house without central heat and central air. And of course, that poses another issue. How do you cool the house in the summer? How do you heat the house in the winter? In the summer, it was hot. It was very hot. And I lived in that house from, I was 8 or 9, because I was in there from 2nd, 3rd grade, something like that. 8 or 9 until, it might have even been younger than that, but at least 8 or 9 until I was about 17. That whole time, we did not have central heating and air. And I found that a lot of people take that for granted. That is a luxury. European countries, people are just finding out they want to go to Europe and all these other places. It's illegal to have, at least currently, central AC. So I don't know how they heat their houses. I don't know how they cool or whatever, but it's illegal. We didn't have that. So we grew up with the box fan in the window, the ceiling fan. It's hot as hell at night. You have to open the window, and we'd sleep like that. And then you have to get up and go to school, perform. My parents had to go to work. And at the time, I had no concept of money. And other people, they just considered it a luxury, like that's what you did. Well, my dad decided he wasn't doing that. And they'd ask him, and in my best voice that he can tell you, because he's not gonna curse or do anything, it was basically, nigga, it was that to feed my family or to have central air and heat, and I'd rather feed my family. But he'd say it a lot kinder than that. He'd say, hey, I couldn't afford it, or whatever he said, because there were a couple people who asked. But going through that helped me with with the situation that I am in now, that you will hear about in a later video. It wasn't until I think it was the last year that I lived in Alabama before we moved to Ohio, that he finally got a window air conditioner. And I think it was used, a window air conditioner to put in the living room. Now, that means that he had to deal with my mother saying that she was hot, us kids saying that we were hot, and him having to tell us as a man that, hey, we're going to have to stick together as a family and figure this out. And my mother was a good woman. She helped, and they made decisions together to help figure it out. And what they would do is, again, they'd get box fans. We'd have ceiling fans. And then eventually we get the AC. For heat, we had a wood-burning stove in the living room. I don't know if any of you guys have ever had this, but it was the best childhood ever, because now I see these pampered, entitled, spoiled people, and if something breaks, they're suffering. It's the end of the world. If the AC breaks for me, I'm good. I know what to do, and I can endure it. That's why I camp and do all these other outdoor activities in weather like this, even with asthma, so that I can feel that uncomfort. I thrive on that uncomfort because it's easy for me now. It wasn't always, but it's easy, or easier, I should say, for me now. What they would do, and what I watched my parents do, was in the wintertime, I remember it was an ice storm. And when the weather would change and it would snow, my dad had this coal, and he'd put a couple lumps of coal that you talk about with this fake Santa Claus. He'd throw those in there with some wood. They heat up this wood burning fireplace they had to keep going during the day. And then they would take a brick and they'd heat these bricks on the stove, on this big wood burning stove. And we would all huddle up in the living room, and we would sleep on this pull-out couch, and they would take turns heating these bricks until they were just warm enough, and then they'd wrap them in a towel and they'd put them up under my feet, my sisters and brothers. And they did shifts on this. Somebody would stay up, tend to the fire, heat the bricks, the other person would sleep for a couple hours, and they rotated. That really stuck with me now, because for the past year and a half, you guys haven't known because I haven't said anything, my AC has gone out. Now I have central heat. They put in a new furnace in my house before I bought the house, but the AC is about 25 years old. It went out last spring, and I haven't replaced it. I figured out other ways to cool my house. And there's other rooms in my house, like my office, that doesn't have an air conditioner. I have a little window fan, and it gets 80 degrees in there, and I have to think and work and survive with that. But those are the type of things that when I think back on, if I hadn't have had those harder experiences, would I be the man that I am today? I'm not saying I'm a hard man. I'm definitely not a soft man, but would I be able to know what to do and how to survive and how not to complain during those hard times? So on this 10 Toast Tuesday, what I'm saying is sometimes what you think is a luxury, or a necessity, I should say, not a luxury. What is a necessity is actually a luxury. People have not had central heating and air for centuries, and still to this day don't have it. So, a lot of countries, it's something we as Americans take for granted. I'll stand 10 toes down on that. I stand 10 toes down on the decision that my dad made not to get central air. It wasn't to be the hardest man alive because he loves some AC. It was a necessity. Either he spent thousands of dollars to have this ductwork, or he couldn't afford to build or keep the house, and we had to move. So he made a decision to eat and to be able to put a roof over our head and figure the other stuff out. So he has always kept it 10 toes down. With that, I hope you guys are having a good day. The next one we're gonna get into is my current situation with this AC. And that branches off into a couple more subjects. So stay tuned for that. Until next time, and you know there will be a next time, I'm out.